What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to episode 14 of the More Smarter Show. Jake, what do we have on the agenda today?
So today we have special guest Scott Bauer, who is the owner of Coast Digital. Scott and I have known each other for a long time. Scott, I realize, we've known each other for a long time, but I don't know a ton about Coast Digital. So I'm not even going to try to explain it. I'm just going to immediately hand it off to you so you can talk about how you created that company and where you are today.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, guys. So Coast Digital is a creative and performance marketing agency. So we partner with different e-commerce brands, essentially helping them acquire new customers through different acquisition channels. I started Coast Digital about 6 years ago. Originally, I was full-time at Barstool Sports. So I was hired by Barstool to be essentially their first ever marketer. It was a much smaller company back then. They knew how to build a popular YouTube channel or Instagram account or build a personality, but they had no idea what a Facebook ad was or an email to acquire customers for their store. So I was essentially hired to help monetize their growing audiences through paid marketing, email marketing, and different growth marketing initiatives. And while I was there, Barstool worked with a lot of other e-commerce brands because the brands would sponsor different Barstool shows. So they would work with apparel brands and health and beauty brands. And just organically being in the office, I would meet a lot of founders and CMOs and CEOs, and they would hear what I was doing for Barstool and just naturally built a little bit of a side business helping other e-commerce brands with their marketing. And that side business kind of overtook my life a little bit. And I one day walked into the CEO's office. I was honest with her. I told her what was going on. And she looked at me and goes, "Oh, this is perfect. You'll quit today and I'll hire you as an agency and you could start your own company. And Barstool could be your kind of first big whale client."
That was Erica?
That was Erica, yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool.
And yeah, I said, okay. Didn't think that's how that conversation would go, but that's really the inception story of Coast Digital. And fast forward 5.5 years and we've grown. I have 7 full-time employees. Most of them are based in Los Angeles. And yeah, we help anywhere between 20 to 30 e-commerce brands in a given month.
Wow. That's awesome. I mean, part of this show, honestly, is kind of ruined now because we talk a lot about the grind, where the grind kind of starts. That transition is really tough. But I mean, it seems like having a whale client immediately is all sunshine and rainbows. I'm imagining it's not. But tell me a little bit about how that transition from being the employee to now the self-employed.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'd say that I almost have dealt with the grind in an opposite fashion than a lot of other founders and business owners, in the sense of being able to work with Barstool in the beginning of the company was kind of like a growth hack. I had a nice client. I was able to hire. I wasn't worried about a paycheck. I was getting introductions through Barstool for other clients. But as of 2 years ago, Barstool Sports is no longer a client of mine. So what was really helped the momentum of the business in the beginning started to kind of like dwindle out over the last few years. So I'd say the grind it's maybe it wasn't as much of a grind in the beginning to actually start the company, but I am definitely going through it and grinding as much as any business owner. And I'm happy to dive into any of that.
Yeah, that's a really cool perspective, because it wasn't so much building, but it was scaling or getting, or maybe even maintaining. That was the challenge. So how do you deal with having, maybe, I don't know what your clientele is like in terms of the size, but if you have like one client that's doing 80% of your revenue, that's scary, right? Do you have that situation? Did you have that situation?
That's what it was in the beginning. And I would say I was naive in the beginning and I wasn't scared. And then one day I got really scared. So yeah, in the beginning, Barstool made up of the majority of our revenue, and I was hiring employees. I was hiring full-time employees and kind of just not thinking that I would ever lose them, which was naive of me. And when I kind of first realized like, oh, they're not going to be my client forever. I'm a third party. I'm an agency. You know, things are going to change. I made it like a very specific goal in the company to diversify our revenue and try to get to a place where Barstool now is 60% of the revenue, 40% of the revenue. And by the time we lost Barstool about 2 years ago, it was a big hit, but Barstool was only 10, 15% of the revenue. So it wasn't like a death sentence. Yeah.
That's awesome. How did you get that realization of like back, I guess 6 years ago when you had them and you're like, this is not going to last forever? I feel like there's a lot of business owners that are like high on the wave and not really realistic. How did you get that point?
Probably just from losing other clients. So, you know, from the day I started Coast Digital to today, we've worked with some really awesome brands, but every brand and every client has a lifespan. I've maybe 2 clients today that have been around almost as long as Barstool. So just having and learning that there's a lifespan of every client, and that's normal. And I worked with Barstool for 4 years on top of the 2 years I worked full time there. So that was a 6-year relationship. That's almost unheard of in the marketing agency world. So I think just like going through it, learning, failing, losing clients, you know, you kind of slowly learn like, oh, this isn't going to last forever. The current CEO of Barstool is not Erica anymore. The head of the marketing department wasn't, you know, changed as I was a third party. So there's nothing I can do. Some situations are completely out of my control. The internal team turns over, priorities change, their profit targets change. And at the end of the day, being a third party marketing agency, it's very hard to control your own destiny because it's very easy for a brand to look at it and be like, oh, we could easily find a cheaper option. And I can't even like argue. They don't even let me part of the conversation. So as I've been doing this for a few years, you start to realize every client has a lifespan and you need to build the company in a systematic way that allows you to kind of survive the roller coaster that it kind of is.
I think it's so interesting, the development of hiring specialists, because my wife Meg is this too. So she was a transaction coordinator for a real estate team, did their paperwork. And then she's like, you know what? I'm going to create a business, a company of transaction coordinators. And now my company will get hired for this role, which is a very similar story to how you started. Now, specialists in that, like I'm new to business still. Like I started entrepreneurship like 6 years ago. So like, has that always been a thing, or is that like a new like gig working, you know, our society is getting more into specialists?
I think it's always been a thing, but I do think it's been like wildly like that industry has exploded over the last 5 years with the internet, with remote work, with I think people starting to get used to the fact that like, oh, I can outsource this for a fifth of the price. I think there's like a bunch of different variables, but I do think that it has exploded the last few years. Platforms have been created, the Upworks of the world. So I do think that as like our generation starts to become the decision makers of corporations and businesses, like it's kind of secondhand nature. Like, yeah, I'll hire a freelance marketer. Why would I pay someone full time? I'm gonna have to pay their insurance, their benefits, their workers' comp. I'm gonna, you know, hopefully they keep learning. They don't have other clients, so they're not learning about other industries, other business sizes. So I think that outsourcing work to specialists has a lot of pros. There's obviously some cons to it as well, and it has to be a very specific situation for it to make sense. But we outsource. Like I have full-time employees, and I outsource work as well.
Yeah, let's go into your hiring and where you started with where you are. So can you talk about like challenges maybe through hiring? I'm sure you've had a ton.
Oh yeah, I feel like I joke with my partner Sean, like we could write a book on what not to do about hiring, because we've had some doozies. So in the beginning, you know, the playbook has always been somewhat similar. We use a platform like Indeed. We'll go through resumes, we'll have interviews, we'll have second interviews, but in the beginning, the weren't very good at it. And we've put in very like systematic strategies to kind of weed out the people that we think are troublemakers now, which I'm happy to get into. But in the beginning, we've always been remote, which number one, I will say has been the biggest challenge. As a person that runs a remote company, I think remote work is awful. Like I actually despise it. I wish I was in an office today with my team. I think my team would be more productive. I think we would learn more. I think we'd be more creative. And that's something that I think about all the time in terms of my next chapter and, you know, a next venture eventually. Like I do well in social settings, and hiring people remote, it's hard to get a read on them. And in the beginning, you know, I hired a guy that I thought was going to be a good marketer, and a month into his tenure, I noticed he was stealing our case studies and selling them on his own website and trying to land marketing clients. So had to let that guy go. I've dealt with people that just aren't responsive on Slack, on email. They don't answer the phone. So I've had to let people go. I'd say a couple learnings that we've had that have made, you know, ourselves better at hiring is number one, we started sending all of our marketers and creative applicants a test. And even that test we've had to start improving it over time, because with tools like ChatGPT, it's really easy to pass a test. So we've had to start creating questions on that test that's not just copy and paste into ChatGPT, but helps us understand the personality of the applicant and the motivations behind the applicant. But in all reality, hiring is really hard. We have a core team right now that I'm very proud of. I trust them. They work very hard. They're all remote, and I know they're not taking advantage of it. But we've had some horror stories, and it's hard. I think this new era we're in with remote work, you know, everyone loves it. You get to work from home. You don't have to commute. Like, I actually think it's awful.
I agree too. I mean, me and Jake are part of a virtual brokerage, and I think the office is definitely always better, but I think the virtual is just, it's never going to go away, and it's so convenient that I don't care really if it's not what I want. But so you said that you have seven employees. What are like good character traits that they kind of have that made you really like want to rock with these people?
Yeah, the number one I would say is proactiveness. So, and it also kind of does blend towards the virtual component of the job, but there's a lot of things, especially as a digital marketer, if your job is to acquire new customers for a coffee brand, you could sit on your computer in the morning and there's 10,000 things you could do. Like, are you going to run a Facebook ad? Are you going to launch creative? Are you going to send an email? Are you going to test different buyer personas, test cop? There's a billion things. So you need to be proactive instead of waiting for me as their manager to say, hey, you should do this, or wait for the client to say, hey, are you thinking about this? Are you doing this? You need to be proactive. You need to just go and do things, to go do tests, communicate proactively. So being proactive is the number one trait. I tell all of our new hires, I would rather you call me, Slack me, email me 10,000 times a day than me never hear from you. That is the biggest red flag ever. If I don't hear from one of my employees for a couple of days, my first thought is they are surfing in Santa Monica. Like, I like, what are they doing? Why aren't they asking me questions? Why aren't they asking to collaborate? So proactiveness, being able to communicate, and let me think of a couple other traits. I think also just not being afraid. Like we always say, don't be afraid to fail, but only fail once. So like someone may send an email and not double check it, and a lot of the things we use are templates. So they may accidentally email a client with the client's name from another client. Like, you know, they're addressing someone with an incorrect name or incorrect client name. That's a big mistake. Don't do it. Like, okay, learn from it. Don't do it again. Read your emails better next time. So proactiveness, communicate, and yes, don't be afraid to fail, but don't make the same mistake twice.
I agree with don't be afraid to fail. In our management company, we have employees, and we have great employees, thankfully. And what they all have in common is they will ask me, they probably won't ask me a question. They'll go ahead and do it and mess up, which is what we want, right? Obviously to a certain extent, but like my analogy is, listen, your position, we need Aaron Judge for your position. That's what I tell one of our employees. Like, he's a baseball guy, so he gets it. Like, your position that we hired for is to be the captain, is like to be Aaron Judge. If I wanted to hire a second baseman, like a 9-hitter, then I expect that person to ask me these questions. But I expect Aaron Judge to know the answer to the questions. And then maybe I'm Aaron Boone and I say, hey, you should have done that once in a while. That's fine. That's great, right? It's hard, though, when you're in the hiring process to know whether or not you're going to get an Aaron Judge or a backup second baseman.
Yeah, and the truth is, I feel like you always hear the cliche, hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
It's true. Like we've had to let people go. It's tough conversations, but ultimately we're running for-profit businesses. And if you know an employee is just not going to cut it, the worst thing you can do for the company and the worst thing you can do for that individual is just kick the can down the road. And I've done that many times because having tough, critical conversations is hard. And you convince yourself, give them another week, give them a month. They're having a bad day, what have you. So, my recommendation there would be, if you know it's not going to work, just have the conversation, make the decision. And ultimately, it's on that individual. There's plenty of jobs out there. There's plenty of opportunities. You can still help them. You could be a resource for them. You could be a referral for them. But ultimately, I actually think that the right saying is almost hire fast, fire fast. I think you could argue that, like, what does hire slow really mean? I don't know.
Well, so I want to rewind a little bit back to when you were a few years into your business, and then it got a little tricky when you lost a big client. So this is the More Smarter show, and we like to have systems, processes, things in place where we're working more smarter and not more harder. But I want to hear, did you have to get into the more harder world once you lost that client to really get back up? Same question for when you fire someone. When someone gets let go, do you have to work more harder in that position until that position's filled?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I love the working smarter, not harder. I think about that almost on a weekly basis, because I think it's actually the one, like a big chapter of Coast is really relatable to this, in the sense of about 3 years ago. And I won't get into like the too nitty gritty, because I know this isn't like a Facebook ad podcast, but there was a big change with Facebook ads. Apple and Meta, Facebook, actually went to war. They're still probably at war with each other, but there was this huge attribution tracking issue that happened in my industry, where everyone uses iPhones, but everyone interacts with Instagram and Facebook on the iPhones. And one day Apple said, Facebook, you are no longer allowed to track people the way you've been tracking, because it goes against privacy restrictions. And as a Facebook marketer, it basically flipped the industry on its head, because we no longer knew if Jake bought the Aaron Judge baseball card from the Facebook ad I was running. We just kind of were spending money to spend money. And when that happened, our hypothesis as a company, well, one, I lost a bunch of clients because ads started tanking and people were losing money and they got rid of their agencies. Number two, what actually happened as a result of it was creative became way more important for marketing agencies, because of a lot of stuff that I don't need to get into today, but the actual asset, the creative, the video, the Instagram you're running became more important. And because of that, we made a big bet. We decided to slightly pivot. And in addition to being a performance marketing agency, we tried to become a creative production agency. And we essentially were working way harder, not smarter, to do the same thing. Our hypothesis was that brands are going to hire marketing agencies that could create the assets and run the assets. And what we did was I hired a bunch of people in Los Angeles to run around and try to shoot content. And we made some critical mistakes. We were essentially trying to shoot like Super Bowl-like commercials. And we were hiring models and sound people and directors and booking locations. And I am not a creative agency. I am not a model agency. I had no idea what I was doing. And the interesting point was I was landing clients faster than I've ever landed clients, like, because brands needed creative. It was like they had to get new assets to combat these crazy changes. But from an actual service delivery and an actual like operations perspective of my company, it was a disaster. We had no idea what we were doing. I was working way harder, not smarter. And it took me almost a year and a half to finally say, this is not working. Like, let's stop working harder and work smarter, and let's go back to our roots. Like, got rid of that entire arm of the business and went back to just, we run Facebook ads. We could do post-production. So I still had graphic designers and video editors on my team, but we're not actually like pitching and selling crazy Don Draper like commercials. And that was I'm very happy we made that decision. It probably took longer than I wish, but that's a good example of a time in our business where we started to work really hard, not smart, but I learned the lesson. And today we've really dialed in our service offering. But it took a while to learn that lesson.
When you were doing that, was there any thought of like, all right, we can start this new branch, and from this new branch, we can make more money because we can upcharge? This is like our upcharge. And was there any part of you that like, it's like, like I don't want to let go of it because we can kind of make more money if we get this down?
In the beginning, 100%, because the hardest part of my business, and I'd probably be willing to bet that it's similar to your guys' world and definitely the real estate world, is landing new clients, right? It's the lifeblood of the business. If we all can land unlimited clients, we'll figure it out. And for that year and a half, I was like shooting fish in a barrel. I was landing the client, like bigger clients than I ever thought I would, massive packages. So for a while I was like, guys, like, we'll figure it out. Like, let's keep the clients coming in. That's what pays the bills. But at a certain point, when you do the math and you start evaluating how much time goes into it and how much money we're losing on the actors, the models, how subjective creative is. We would work on a shoot. It would be unbelievable. We'd send it to the client and they'd say, oh, I hate this, reshoot this. And we'd be like, what? So there was a lot of different kind of variables at play. But yeah, in the beginning, I was very tentative to let go of it because we were landing clients. And ultimately, I came with the conclusion that it's not just about landing clients. You have to land the right client. It has to be otherwise you're probably not making money. You're probably spending too much time on it. And yeah, it's a tough cycle to be in when you're just taking on any business.
Yeah, we know landing the right client versus wrong client all too well, for sure, in many ways. So are you able to go on vacation? Like, does your business need you on the day-to-day?
That's a great question. I just got back from a week in France and I got into one argument. I won't say fight. Not that my wife could hear me right now, but she's probably a listener. And it took a little bit. It's hard for me to go away. My team is really good, and it's not about the actual work getting done. I trust that the work gets done. It's me being a little, I'd say, kind of like psycho in the sense of like wanting to read every email and see every Slack and make sure there's no client fires. But I try to go away a couple times a year. I have a partner, Sean, and when I go away, he has my back and he will only text or call me in an emergency. And same thing, with him going away. And I'm expecting my second child in December, and I'm already starting the conversations with my wife about how much time are you going to take off? And it's like, well, you want an expensive house and you want expensive things. So like, I'm going to do the best I can. But the business is in a place right now where it can operate without me, but I don't think it doesn't. I run all the sales. So I run biz dev for the business. So there's no new clients coming if I'm not working.
And I think that's okay. I go on vacation too. And, I'm also married to an entrepreneur, so it's definitely different. But when Meg and I are away, we like checking in. Like, we chose to do this career path. We quit our jobs to do this. Like, I think that's okay. You don't want to be, putting out a $50 problem when you're on vacation. But being a business owner, I actually love that challenge of, that balance.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. I like being in like different locations. Like my girlfriend lived in South Carolina and Florida. So like whenever I go visit her, it's like, all right, this is my office for the week. I'm gonna check in I'm gonna have 2 hours in the morning where I'm just kind of locked in and doing my work, and she's doing her thing, and that's just kind of like, it's kind of cool when you have the ability to do that.
I agree completely. I think there's a balance, and this is probably I'm speaking a little bit more maybe to my personality than yours. I have an addictive personality, and there's times where I'll just check my email and Slack like 45 times in like a course of 2 hours, and it's like, what are you doing? And like the same thing with like my brands. I look at their Shopify stores, I look at their sales, I look at their Facebook ad performance. And it's like I'll notice I'm just constantly checking it, where I easily could put an hour in the morning and an hour at night and do exactly the same thing. For me, I think I sometimes need to kind of unplug and reset, because I have a tendency to kind of obsess over things like that.
It's certainly me too. Yeah, certainly. I love checking numbers. Like, it's fun to look at. How much money did I make today? Like, who doesn't like checking that? You know, there's part of it's okay for sure. So can you talk about some like apps or tools that you use, maybe some AI on the day-to-day?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to think of a few that maybe aren't as common than just saying, yeah, I use ChatGPT to write my emails. So I've used a company called Superhuman now for a couple of years. Do you guys know?
You told me that about a couple of years. Yeah, because of you a couple of years ago.
Do you use it?
Like just a free trial, and then I stopped.
Oh, yeah.
But it's really for if it would record this meeting, for example. That's what I used it for. But now Gemini does this.
Got it. Okay. So I use Superhuman for their email tools. So there's actually a few now that have come out the last few months. You see, new AI tools every day, I feel like, but Superhuman was one of the early adapters. So their whole hypothesis is like, if you use Gmail for your email, it's just a really not like systematic process to email. You can't, if you get an email from a client and you're like, I don't want to respond right now, I want to respond at the end of the day. There's no way of doing that. You used to not be able to schedule emails. I think Gmail's got a little better, but Superhuman it essentially turns like your email inbox, which I get a lot of emails every day from employees, from clients, from partners. It's almost like a video game. And the whole point of the game is to be on inbox 0 by the end of the day. So you're motivated to answer emails. It's easy to remind yourself on certain things. You have different kind of subcategories to it. So anyone that has a crowded email inbox on a daily basis, I couldn't recommend Superhuman enough. The other one that I've been loving recently, and there's a few competitors as well, it's called WhisperFlow. And essentially what WhisperFlow is it's like a dictation app. So you use it to basically use voice command. And you can use voice command in ChatGPT. You can use it in Slack. You can use it in email. And for the entirety of Coast, the whole time I've been running it, I would send Slacks with my fingers and I'd write emails with my fingers. And now when I'm conversing with ChatGPT or I'm conversing with an employee on Slack, 80% of the time I'm using voice. And I never thought I'd be that guy, because I used to cringe when I'd watch like my dad send voice texts in his phone, which I feel like we've all seen. But now I'm like, it's so much quicker. Like, it's so much quicker. So I highly recommend testing WhisperFlow or any of those other voice applications out there. And then, yeah, definitely use ChatGPT.
Did you tell Rob about WhisperFlow? Because he told me about it yesterday.
I don't think so.
That's just a coincidence.
Yeah, I don't think I told him about WhisperFlow.
We were testing it out literally yesterday.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Give it a chance. It's honestly great. But yeah, I use ChatGPT, and then something that's very marketing D2C specific. Triple Whale just came out with AI Moby workflows, which I use for all my clients, but that's a little in the weeds.
You know what Jake and I kind of use a lot is just the audio message. So it's not actually typing it out. It's not an email, but it's just a very, very efficient way of doing the same, kind of a similar thing.
Yeah, Jake's been using the voice message longer than anyone I've ever met.
Yeah, no, I know.
Always.
Does WhisperFlow, does that like help with grammar and everything too? Because that's like my biggest thing. If I'm like texting and driving, I have to use it. But then
it's not going to type. Sorry, it's not going to spell words wrong. What do you mean?
Well, no. Grammar wise, just like saying like punctuate. I don't know. Like whenever I'm driving,
it does. So I think Dylan does have a point here, because it does. It's like a better version of like the voice app or whatever on the iPhone, because it does know when to use a question mark. It does know when to put things in parentheses, and it uses like your tone and your, I guess, I don't know exactly how it works, but it uses the entire voice memo, and then it puts it through their, algorithms or AI technology. And yeah, it's pretty crazy. I highly recommend it.
That's sweet. And then for the Superhuman, do they have automated responses too that you can set up with AI?
Yes, they do. They create auto drafts that you can then just press send if you want. I don't use them a lot. I know some people do, but they also have they basically have like a ChatGPT integration. I don't know if it's powered by ChatGPT, but you can essentially, if I pull up an email from a client, let's say a client emailed me questions and concerns about their Facebook ad account, I use their created email AI tool, and then I'll use Whisperflow with it. So I will hit the Whisperflow button, I will create the draft using my voice, and then Superhuman will then draft it again using like their improved draft tool. And it's just like, holy crap.
Yeah, I bet that makes it so much smoother. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I tell my employees this, and I hope none of my clients are listening, but I think a big part of, our job as marketing partners for our brands is there is some perception involved. And if we're going to send a really detailed marketing report, and we use tools now that help us create them in 5 minutes, and it used to take us 2 hours, and then we'll write a really well-worded email on top of it. And then what we'll do on top of that is use a tool like Loom. Are you guys familiar with Loom?
Oh, I'm the biggest Loom fan. You think I'm an audio message fan? Loom is just next level for me.
Yeah, so love Loom. So use Loom in the sense of, I think anyone that has been involved in the last 2 years of AI and ChatGPT, people start to realize things. Like, for example, if you get an email and it has all those M dashes in it, you're like, come on, dude. So like,
yep.
You need to realize that people now perceive some work less valuable. So when you put a Loom on top of it, and even if it's a 5-minute Loom and you walk them through a report that was made by AI, written from an email written by AI, but you create that personal Loom, I think it brings that perceived value back up to
yes. This is my love language. I do that, and I say, and I'll also throw this in ChatGPT for you guys to see below. Like, I clearly just say it's ChatGPT. It builds trust, but I'm also doing the Loom video to show you that I'm here as a person putting it in ChatGPT.
Exactly. I'll give you guys one more quick use case, because I can't believe I didn't bring this up when you asked the question. But when Jake asked me to join the show, he sent me a reminder a few hours ago, and I was like, oh, the show, like I transparently haven't watched any of the episodes. So I was like, oh man, like, what are they going to ask me? So I found your YouTube channel, and I clicked on the latest episode, and it was a guy that runs a bookkeeping company. And I copied the YouTube transcript. I put it into ChatGPT, and I said, what are the 10 most likely questions that Jake and Dill are going to ask me on this podcast? And so far it's 5 for 5, I think. So
it will be 10 for 10. It will be 10 for 10.
So like things like that. And like, if you're meeting with a client and your client has any public work out there, or public YouTube videos, like I think it's really helpful for sales and analyzing public data out there to like help you kind of know what you're walking into in a lot of conversations.
Yeah, you had jokingly mentioned, like, I hope a client's not listening, how easy this might be for me. But that's exactly what a specialist business is, right? Like, back from the beginning of this conversation, yeah, I'm hiring you because it's going to take you 5 minutes. It would take me 2 hours for them to take 5 minutes because I got to train someone for it to take 5 minutes. But like, here, you got it, Scott. Same as my garage door guy who came over here and fixed something in 2 seconds. It would take me years to fix that. So I'm paying him to do that. I think there's no problem with that.
I think about that all the time. And one phrase that I always go back to is, it's not the tool, it's the carpenter. So, ChatGPT is very powerful. And yes, my apparel brand has access to ChatGPT, and they could pay for an AI platform that I use, and they could pay for Superhuman and Whisperflow. But ultimately, it's not the tool, it's the person that knows how to use the tool. And I relate to that so much. And I think that's why when people say AI is going to take all of our jobs, I don't think that's true. I think AI is going to help people become more efficient at their jobs. But you're so right. Ultimately, everyone has their own skill set. Everyone has their own, strengths and weaknesses. And if someone, at least in my world, if you run an e-commerce brand, you're dealing with so much. You're running the brand, you're running the inventory, you're dealing with taxes, you're dealing with employees, partners, what have you. And sure, has paid marketing and digital marketing become a little more automated? Yeah, but the owner of the business doesn't have 40 hours a week or 40 hours a month to worry about it. So they hire a specialist. So it's up to the specialist to then be able to optimize their workflows.
Yeah, I would even use that to your advantage on sales calls. Like, hey, this is what you're telling me is your problem. That shit takes me 3 minutes. Like,
yeah,
give it to me. I got you, and it's going to be easier for both of us because I know how to do this so proficiently.
Yeah, it's a great point, and we do. So one thing I always say to prospects is, one, I'm going to be fully transparent on this conversation. Paid marketing has become way more automated. So because of that, here are the 3 levers that we focus on, because creating the ads and managing the ads, any third grader with YouTube can do now. So we worry about creative, we worry about your product feed, and we worry about your buyer personas, what have you. So yeah, we do lean into it in some regard. But yeah, it's a great point.
It almost like I've seen kind of like social media or marketing agencies just I've seen that a lot in the past probably 4 years, and it seems like there's a lot of different people trying to start that, so it seems like a pretty competitive industry. Or is it mainly those kind of tools that you're using that are like keeping you ahead of the game, or what would you say are some of the things that are keeping you like ahead of everyone else in such a competitive industry?
Yeah, it's wildly competitive. Anyone with a computer can launch a marketing agency, just like anyone with a computer can become a realtor or what have you. So I think it's never been easier to be like an entrepreneur, to start your own company, to run an agency. I have a team, I have partners, I have tools. There are people that are a one-person company that brand themselves as an agency, and there's nothing I can do about it. So it is very competitive. I think the one thing that, one advantage we have from people that are starting today is, and this is very similar to any business like real estate, in the sense of you build momentum, you build inertia. As you get more customers and you build more relationships and your network gets bigger, you just naturally get more client referrals or partner referrals or, just inbound leads from people that have heard of you. So I think one advantage is the natural momentum that we've built over the last 5 years. The other one is, because we're not a massive agency, we don't have 500 employees, we can move very quickly. One example of this would be, we've recently launched a new service offering where we help brands increase the likelihood that they'll actually show up on ChatGPT. So for the last 5 years, we've ran Google ads for brands. If you type in, best pair of jeans, and we have a jean client, we can help you show up with a Google Shopping or Google search ad. Well, if a lot of that traffic is now going to ChatGPT, we wanted to create a service offering that allowed brands to figure out, how can I drive more traffic and more exposure through these AI search engines. So, we had this idea, and within 2 weeks I had a landing page, and I had emails going out, and I was landing sales calls, and I think it would take months for a bigger agency to get there. So our size we can use as a weapon, and I'd say the natural momentum of just being around for the last 5 years. And I still, in the beginning, just saying that I worked at Barstool, like, people were like, "Oh, really? Like, that's so cool. Do you know Dave Portnoy?" And I still use that trick. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's such an eye catcher, right? Like, that's something that you could just be like, I was one of the first marketing people at Barstool, and see them. And now
I met Dave Portnoy, and I asked him if he knows Scott Bauer. He said no.
Yeah, I'm sure he's like, yeah, he's my guy.
He said no.
That's great.
Before we get into like the closing questions, which you probably already know from your ChatGPT experience, I got a question about like profitability. It's such a overlooked, more dumber thing that so many smart people have that challenge with. Right? You could be really smart and be more dumber when it comes to how much money your business is making. So how do you keep track of that? How do you make sure you're profiting and your revenue strong and your net strong?
Yeah, well, my brain goes into two ways. The first thing I'll say is, one of the biggest learnings that I've had as a business owner came about, I'd say, 2 years ago. And it's so silly, and maybe people will relate to this, or maybe they'll just call me an idiot. But for the first 3-4 years of the business, I was making a little money. I paid myself a salary. I would take some monthly distributions. Like, everything was fine. But when I look back and I reflect, I wasn't measuring the success of Coast Digital based on the net profit of the business. Honestly, I was personally measuring the success on how many employees I had, which was the stupidest thing of all time. I really do think it goes back to the fact that when I would go home and I would see friends and I'd see old high school buddies or cousins or whatever, they'd say, "Hey, how you doing? How many employees do you have?" They'd hear that I started a business. "Hey, Scott, you run close. How many employees do you have?" They go, I
In
got
our
10
world,
employees."
in real estate investing world, it's how many doors do you have, but no one asks about how much cash flow you make. It's the same thing.
It's exactly it. So they would always ask that. And I feel like I just built this like subconscious kind of motivation to just hire more people. And no one ever asks how profitable you are, which I wish they did, because maybe I wouldn't have made some of the mistakes I made in the early on. But now all I care about is net profit. All I care about is net profit per employee, net profit per client. Everything, every decision, every hiring decision, every client onboarding decision goes back to, does this help us become more profitable? And the way we do, it's easy to measure. I mean, we use QuickBooks. I have a bookkeeper. I look at profit and loss every month. We categorize our expenses into marketing or sales or operations. I can tell you how much expenses went into each client, how expensive each employee is. So from a high level, calculating it's not hard. And if you're having trouble calculating it, I would recommend just hiring a bookkeeper. You know, maybe you can get a cheap one at a couple $100 a month from the Philippines, or a little bit more, you know, a reliable one for closer to $1,000 a month. But if you have a notably sized expense sheet every month and you're not the greatest at math and you're not the greatest at QuickBooks, it's very worth it to have a bookkeeper.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So.
And I know a good one from your last episode. You should.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
I was gonna plug it. Yeah. So, you said that you have 20 to 30 clients a month about, and that's pretty much your kind of department right there, biz dev and sales. What are your kind of strategies right now landing, I guess, new clients? Are those, I guess, a first question on that, are those clients all monthly subscription kind of that you're helping out, or is it like projects? How does that kind of work?
Yeah. So early on, I would take any client I could find. All money was green. Now we have a very specific, kind of rules that we need to follow. So all of our clients are monthly engagements. In terms of how do we find clients, we have a few different ways. I'd say the number one way is through referral partners, whether it's just colleagues I met along the way. I work with a few marketplaces that specialize in connecting brands with agencies or brands with freelancers. We do cold email outreach and cold LinkedIn outreach. But I'd say, biz dev is something we could always get better at. I think we've tried a million different things. We've hired seasoned director of sales before. We've tried a lot of things. But I'd say the most consistent is just constantly reaching out to your network and reminding them who you are and why you exist and the value props you serve. And naturally that will bring in inbound and referrals, and then always having a way of reaching out to brands and marketers and founders that have never heard you before.
Wrapping up with some questions here. Coast Digital, where'd you come up with the name?
So the original name was when I lived in New York and my first part-time employee lived in Los Angeles. So the company was originally called Coast to Coast Media. And then when I moved to San Diego, I had to reincorporate, and everyone was on the same coast at that point. So I switched it to Coast Media. I also didn't like the word, I switched to Coast Digital. I felt like media was kind of putting us in a box where we would only do media, and I wanted the positioning to be a little bit broader.
I like that. I like digital. So 1 to 10, how sellable is your business? Meaning the systems you have in place, not necessarily your intention to sell.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say it's a 7. I think if I found the right partner, a bigger agency that wanted to acquire a healthy book of business, B, a reliable, dependent team. We're not overly dependent on one client. I'm not overly involved in the actual operations or services. So from that aspect, I think we're fairly sellable. I think that in order to actually think about potentially selling this, we would need to beef up our pipeline and our ability to land clients in a larger capacity, because I think ultimately the main motivation to acquire a company like mine would be to help a larger agency's pipeline.
Yeah, so lead flow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my last question here. Would you ever consider acquiring a smaller company?
Yeah, I do think about it a lot. There's a massive market of just freelancer marketers. So just one person has 3 clients, one person has 5 clients. That's how I started. It's how a couple of my employees started. So I do think from time to time that a strategy that we could execute in the future would be to essentially, I forgot the phrase off the top of my head right now, but essentially you're acquiring someone to buy their book of business, but also to be an employee. So it would be a way to A, land more clients, and B, to hire good talent.
Yeah.
That's something I'm seeing in the real estate world too, where there's this like big team in San Diego, and they are just absorbing little teams. And it's like they're just becoming this like massive team. So, and I mean, it makes sense still. So, I mean, because they all have this great system about how they work. And if they're all just a part of this one big team, it just looks like this big brand that is very reputable. So, I mean, that seems like something that you could totally do.
Yeah, exactly. Same concept.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I know you have kind of a time crunch here. Well, we very much like appreciate your time. It's very insightful learning more about your business, Coast Digital. And yeah, I mean, I guess we'll open up the floor to you, kind of like where can people find you if they wanna hire you, or how can people find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the company is Coast Digital. Our website is growwithcoast.com. You can find me on LinkedIn just by looking up Scott Bauer and typing Coast Digital. You'll find me. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I had 3 missed calls from my mother-in-law and a text saying, you didn't answer the door, so your dinner now is on the stoop. So apparently my mother-in-law made us dinner and I didn't let her in. So thank you, honestly. I don't have to deal with that now. But yeah, thanks for having me on. This is awesome. I think it's always nice to talk to other, entrepreneurs, and yeah, hopefully you guys have me on again soon.
We will. I think next year we'll have to reconnect and see what growth has been had more smarter.
Oh, I like that. A little follow up.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Thanks.
See you guys soon.